Good afternoon and welcome to the AOK Browser webinar. I'm Mike Russell and I'm going to be taking you through the webinar this afternoon, and we will be covering our capabilities around web-based applications and the AOK suite of products. The agenda for today's meeting is a quick high-level overview of who ChangeBASE are and how the AOK tool can help you. We're then going to look at how the AOK toolset fits into the migration process. We'll have a brief look at the product family. We'll then take a look at some of the migration issues that you may face as you migrate to IE. And then I'm going to take you through the product itself and give you an overview of AOK and how it can be used in the migration process. ChangeBASE was founded in 2007, and the key purpose of us bringing the tool to the market was to provide a tool that automatically found best practice, compatibility, and security issues. Today, the tool has been used on thousands of migrations globally. We are a Microsoft Gold partner, and we are used in all segments of the industry. One of the key components to ChangeBASE is its ability to quickly understand the types of issues that you may face as you move to your chosen platform, whether that be a web-based platform, whether that be a desktop environment or a virtual environment. We do this by logic-based checks. In total, we have over 250,000 questions that we can ask web pages, web apps, or desktop applications. And those questions give us a very clear understanding of the problems or the issues that you may face as you migrate to your target platform. The feedback from the tool comes in the form of a RAG status. That's red, amber, and green. A red issue is a issue that is not automatically fixable, for instance, whereas an amber issue, we normally would have automated fixes. Anything that flags green means that that particular issue or particular check is green and ready for UAT. One of the key components or capabilities of the tool is to provide automation. That automation could be the automation of fixing, or for instance, in a virtual environment, the automation of the sequencing process, i.e. moving from a desktop application to a streamed or virtual application. Some of the key benefits of AOK are as follows. The tool is very easy to use. It can be as simple as drag and dropping applications or URLs, or using things such as the bulk loader to load thousands or hundreds of applications simultaneously. The feedback of analysis results is very quick and almost instantaneous. You load your web apps or your URLs, and then you'll get instant red, amber, green status checks as soon as you specify the targets and run the report. The key, as I said earlier, is automation. And the key thing around automation in this type of environment is when we start to look at analysis, can I automate the number of checks that I'm doing? When we do this manually, of course, there is a possibility of human error. So being able to automate the checks can provide you with a higher level of consistency. The tool is comprehensive in that we support desktop, virtual, and your internet-based applications. And then, of course, we have the ongoing management, being able to manage a migrated application or desktop environment over a period of time, whether that being looking at updates or when applications or URLs are changed. This is the component where we actually think of a business as usual type scenario. Now, where does AOK actually fit into the migration process? Now, this is a question we're asked a lot of the time, and it really depends on where you are in your migration. If we think of moving to XP, it was quite straightforward in many ways. We only had to think of a OS change. Many of the organizations we talk to today are faced with a bigger or more complex set of choices. This will be because they're not only moving to a new OS, so Windows 7, they also now have to take into consideration the IE platform, so the upgrade there. They also have to take into consideration virtual environments, and then of course we have the Office suite of products, so all of our Office 2010 tools that have been upgraded also. So today, where do we fit in? We are the tool that's used after you've decided that you're going to migrate to a specific platform. Where we would first come into play is when you start to think about planning or rationalizing your installed applications or your web-based applications, for instance. What the tool will allow you to do in this instance is load everything and almost use the tool as a filtering process. I want to know all of the areas where I may have red issues. Tell me all the components that actually need some form of remediation or fixing. This will then give a lot of organizations an idea of the actual scope of the project at hand. One of the biggest problems we always see in the marketplace is not understanding specifically how big a problem we may have if we do a migration. As we go further into the migration process, then of course, one of our core capabilities initially was to be able to assess compatibility. What are the specific issues? What approach should I take? What remediation steps can I take? And then, of course, one of our key things, again, is automation. Being able to automatically fix some of the issues that you're finding rather than having to do those things manually. As we move further through that cycle, of course, we have other tools. We do now help with the deployment of virtual applications, of virtual environments, and then we have that ongoing management. So one of the things we'd like to get across today as part of this presentation is just to give you a high-level overview of all of the different modules within the AOK suite and where those specific modules fit within this migration process. So as you can see here, we're looking at the migration process in a more linear fashion. And the key and first module to think of here to test it. I want to test something. I want to understand its red, amber, green status, its RAG status. So in this instance, this is what test it gives you. It gives you that quick analysis of the types of issues that I may face. To the left of test it, we have a new module, a new capability. For all of the types of formats we never used to support, we now have the capabilities to load those types of applications, whether it's a setup file, an XE, and do a deep granular analysis. So the Convert It module is the module that we use for these types of analysis. This is where we take your legacy, your applications where you don't have all of the source, we get them inside the tool, we do that granular analysis, and we allow you to actually start to understand what you can do with those applications. To the right of Test It, we have some add-ins. So if you think of Test It as your core module, so for instance, if you were doing an application migration of a desktop and you were thinking of going to Windows, looking at Server 2008, you were looking at 64-bit, for instance, or 32-bit operating systems, you use Test It. But then on top of that, you may want to overlay other types of checks. And because AOK is very modular, you can then add these specific checks to fit and meet your specific requirements. We have Virtualize It, and as the name said, it's looking at the virtual environments. So today we support many virtual environments, and we of course support the top 4 vendors. And that would include AppV, FinApp, Citrix, ZenApp, Desktop. We'd also look at Symantec and VMware, of course. And this is the tool that will allow you to grade those specific applications, to see which applications suit which specific environment. Below this, we have the Office suite, so Office It. If you're thinking of migrating to Office 2010, of course, you may want to think about non-supported file formats, directory changes, different components that are no longer functioning. So, of course, you may want to look at the dependencies around the Office suite. We also have another module there called QA It. QA It is the module that allows you to create your own specific checks and analysis. So you may want to create your own company standards. You may want to create your own specific checks for different types of applications. To the far right, we have Fix It. And, of course, as the name says, Fix It is for the automated fixing of applications. We then have Be Ready It. Be Ready, again, is a new capability. It allows for the sequencing of applications. So, for instance, you have an MSI, you've tested it, you've done the analysis, you've done the automated fixing, You then decide, for instance, that you want this application to run on AppV. This is the tool that allows you to automate that process. You do the automation from within the tool, you select the applications you want to sequence, and then from a right click, it can be that simple, it will then start the sequencing process in the background. We use an image in the background that has all of the vendors' specific sequencing tools, and we've automated the process. Today, we see a throughput of around 100 applications a day. If you want more throughput, for instance, if you need 1,000 applications done in a day, you just add more virtual images. And the final module to the right is Manage It. Manage It is more of a business as usual tool, as I mentioned earlier. It gives you the ability to manage that app estate. And some of the ways it's used are as follows. Every time Microsoft roll out a new patch on Patch Tuesday, we provide updated reports, an email notification of what that patch is, any specific issues that we found, and a set of reports that are updated each time to allow you to check your installed application. We also find that, of course, there is that annual churn of applications. Users want upgrades, new versions, old applications need to be changed, for instance. And in that type of scenario, we want to understand how those new applications will affect my installed application. So you may have a core app list of 20 applications, and we may want to check the new application side by side against those installed core applications. What we're going to do, we're going to look at any header information, APIs, paths, DLLs, comms information, just to make sure that there will be no conflicts between those applications. And you may have noted that I missed one of these modules, and that module is the module of focus for this afternoon session, and that module is Browse It. Browse It is the module that we use to understand or check the compatibility of websites, URLs, and web-based applications. And if we think of today's environment, if we go back 10 years, it was more of a 10-to-1 balance of for every one web-based application, we have 10 desktop applications. In today's environment, we've gone past that tipping point, and we now have more web-based applications in use than we do have desktop applications. And you'll see things like sales teams using Salesforce and access to other remote applications via internet or web URLs, for instance. Now, when we're using Browse It, and you'll see me using Browse It as part of the demonstration shortly, the key underpinning component here is still Test It. Test It is the core module that works with all of the other modules, so that's your base module. And again, just to reiterate, it's the module that allows you to quickly identify the types of issues that you're checking for, whether that be web-based, office-based, for instance. Test It is the tool in the background to allow you to understand exactly what's happening. And it also gives you that quick insight into where you need to make those decisions. Where are those red issues? Where are those amber issues? And of course, it will allow you, as I said earlier, to go through some form of rationalization, understand what needs to be fixed, relicensed, replaced, or needs further testing. At this point, we're actually going to look at some of the issues that we're trying to fix or assist with when we think of the Browse It module. And in its current form, we're really going to focus on IE and some of the migration challenges to move to IE. Now, Browse It was actually developed to give us two core capabilities. One is around the compatibility of websites, web pages, etc., or web-based applications. And the other is around the integration points. So if we focus firstly on the compatibility piece, what are we seeing? We're seeing organizations migrate to IE8, IE9, for instance, and some of the things they're faced with are, I had 5 buttons, I now only have 4. I used to have a submit button on the website, and now I'm not getting any feedback from that particular submit page. So web pages will break. You'll get different views of a web page depending on who's accessing it and where. So some great examples are, you have a user in the office who's looking at a website. You've got somebody else who's remote. You may have somebody who's logged in for a VPN session. And each one of those, depending on security and other constraints, may have a different view or different experience with that particular web page. Then throw into the mix the different browsers, etc., and then the different configurations each user may apply, and you can imagine that it can get kind of complex. things that we're interested in. We're looking for the changes, what's broken, what's not going to function in that specific environment. And then on top of that, there's two other pieces we really want to think about. It's the integration point. Are those APIs or calls that I was using still going to work? Has something changed or been no longer supported? Great example is the rendering engine changes. And is there something within that HTML? Is the format wrong? Is the configuration wrong? Is there an attribute that's changed that's also going to give me a problem? So these are just some of the issues that we want to be able to understand using a tool such as Browser. When we develop Browser, we had to think about this in two halves. There's two main things that really need to be tackled when you start to look at HTML and web type data. One will be a static analysis. So for instance, taking a URL, drag and drop that URL into the workbench, and then do a web crawl of that specific domain. We may want to bulk load thousands of URLs and then check all of those URLs simultaneously. That is quite standard for a static analysis. Also quite standard with a static analysis will be your IE6 built intranet page. So if we think of some of the reports from Gartner and everybody else, one of the big things they're telling us is the quicker we can get up IE6, the better, due to the number of fixes, security issues, etc., that we face on a day-to-day basis. So one of the checks we also provide is, why not take the source folders from your hosted website, for instance, or your internal website, drag and drop all of the source files onto the desktop or onto the workbench, and then do an analysis of that static data. That will suffice for some instances. What we found, though, is we work with organizations such as Vodafone, for instance, that the real large enterprises have many different ways to access web data, and there are certain things that will catch us out. So what we've also had to develop is a way to dynamically capture data. And the reason we've done this is, for instance, if you think of a large enterprise, you're going to have things like single sign-on. There'll be inputting of data. You're not going to be maybe in one domain. You may, through your daily life at work, touch many domains from one system or from one login page. You're going to 5 or 6 different domains on a daily basis as you look at different systems within an organization. So what we've done is create a tool called client-side capture. Now, client-side capture is the tool of choice for us, and it's been developed with our customers in the field to make sure that we actually capture that extra dynamic, so to speak, when we look at web-based data. So what are the things that client-side capture does, and how should it be used in the field? Well, first off, we want to be able to do a runtime analysis. We want to capture what a specific set of users or a specific user is doing. So what we want to be able to do is capture scripts. We want to be able to capture any dynamic logic, any authentication issues. So that's a classic, when someone tries to log into a page and then they have some problem logging from page to page, or it's single sign-on and you manage to get through one authentication and not another one. So we're not going to capture the login information. We want to capture all of the information that comes back. Now, the reason we use client-side capture is because within large organizations, there's normally servers and other interactions users go through. So, of course, security is a prime for us, and one of the things we don't do is access this data remotely. So we're going to do client-side capture within your firewalls, and it's something that your team will use as a tool that we run on a day-to-day basis. And we're not going to capture any confidential information, or confidential content, documents, images. We don't capture anything like that. None of the cookie information, none of the authentication credentials. We capture none of this at all. We're really just interested in what's coming back when a user goes to a specific page or domain, and we want to capture all of the dependencies and all of the different areas that he's been to. Client-side capture is centrally managed, so all of the install is only done on the server. There is nothing locally on the client machine. You can run this on multiple machines. You can specify which machines you want to capture, whether this capture process will be run by a user, or whether it will be run centrally. You may want to define that you're only interested in the work systems or the internal system that a user goes to. So you may have a black and a white list. So those specific applications that you're not interested in, so social media sites, etc., that you don't want to capture the data from, you can actually exclude those or include specific sites. Have a quick look at the architecture. What we have here is a small proxy server, as I said, on the server, nothing on the end user's machine. That proxy server needs to sit between the user and the internet. We want to capture all of the traffic between that user or those groups of users and the internet. And this is something we're going to do over a period of time. It's not something you're going to do in one day, because users will do different things as part of their day-to-day job on different days of the week, of course. And then what we're going to do is take that data. We're going to cleanse the data. Once we've cleansed the data, we're going to load it into our database. Now, AOK runs on SQL, so we want to take the data, load it into SQL, and then that will allow us to do the analysis of that data within AOK. Now, there's many examples of organizations using the tool, but this is a real great example. This is an organization in the UK. This is like a national car parking company where you park your vehicle in city centres, for instance. And we did an analysis of some of their sites, and they actually caught wind that we'd actually looked at a couple of their sites, and we provided them with the results, etc. And they'd worked out that they had no idea of the types of issues that we'd have actually flagged. So as far as they were concerned, they'd done the migration and had no issues. And the only time they would have understood the issues, of course, is when they got feedback from endpoints and end users, which is not what they required. So what they found was lots of images, etc., weren't tagged correctly. There was mixed security content. Some of the privilege settings were incorrect. They had scripting errors. They had all types of problems. So we quickly ran some tests, fed that back to them, and it allowed them to fix the issues. And you can see some of the issues depicted on the screen below. What you'll notice is we're giving you a lot of information there. Thousands of lines of code were analyzed very quickly, and that allowed them to quickly remediate or fix those specific issues, i.e. pass that data back to the web developers and the people who are administering that site, and allowed them to quickly remediate the problem. As well as identifying issues, there are many ways for us to actually give you that data. So, of course, you do get feedback within the tool where you can drill down into specific issues and get an understanding of what those specific issues are. But then, of course, you do have other options. You do have a fully fledged reporting engine, whether that be reporting from within the tool or remote access to reporting via a web browser. What it allows you to do is get different views of the data, whether you want that high-level view of red, amber, green, tell me exactly the types of issues I have today. Whether you want a more granular look, show me the specific issue, tell me how long you think it will take me to fix that specific issue, and give me the line and column number of that issue with a description, so to speak. So there are many ways to actually understand the data. And the real benefit is, rather than spending weeks or days trying to find a specific issue or set of issues, you can do this within a number of hours and get that specific feedback that you require. So in summary, before we move on to a demonstration of the product, in summary, the tool is designed to actually make your life simpler, allow you to spend less time looking for issues, and give you a very simple process to understand those issues and make fixes and changes. This, in turn, should help speed the deployment and reduce the time taken to actually deploy to a new platform. We do provide what we call a comprehensive cover because of the granularity and the number of checks that we are asking, applications, websites, and virtual applications. And for certain types of issues, of course, we provide automatic remediation. You'll see in the demonstration today, when we look at Browse-It, that automation here is more around the automated analysis rather than the automatic fixing. And here we're going to provide a lot of detail and a lot of information on specifically where these issues are. So at this point, what I'm going to do is move across to AOK and give you a quick demonstration of the tool itself. So on my screen, hopefully you can see the AOK workbench. And before I start doing some work here, I'm going to give here I have multiple databases. I have 3 databases here specifically. And within each of these databases, I've got different types of information or different projects that I'm working on currently. This one is full of applications, as you see, and I've done some testing on these applications. And what you can see here is a list of the types of checks I was looking for. So I was looking for some compatibility issues around these specific applications. You can see these are all the different types of checks that I have on the screen. Different types of checks are different types of questions. You can see for application compatibility, I'm interested in things such as deprecated APIs, so APIs that are no longer present or features that are no longer present. For every type of issue that I'm looking for, you see there's a description. So you don't have to be an expert within the tool. You get a description of what the specific issue is and any steps that you may need to take to fix that particular type of issue. Here you can see within the group we have 5 specific types of checks, and you can see for these applications, this is the red, amber, green status for all of the applications within my current database. Now, I'm not actually going to stop here today on this particular database. This is just a quick overview of what the tool looks like and all of the different pages, etc. To the far left, you can see we've got a couple of options. Load it, as it says, let me load those applications or load those specific URLs that I've dropped onto the system. And then we have some other options. Run those tests and fix those issues. Now, the tool is multi-tenant. So you can have multiple people connected to this database and be working simultaneously. So what I'm going to do is flick to a different database. You can see it's very simple. I simply click on the database. If I wanted to create a database, hold my right button down, create a new database, load a new set of data. It is that simple. Now, here in my database, I have some URL. And what I'm going to do is take you through the process of loading the URL, do some checks. We'll look at the types of results, and we'll look at the types of issues that we're looking for. And then we'll have a Q&A session just to answer any questions that you may have around the tool and its usage. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open a web page. And as you can see here, we've got this web page. It's called TripLog. And these lucky individuals have spent the last 12 months traveling the globe, going to all these wondrous places in a Range Rover or Land Rover, more specifically. And typical website. I'm looking at it in Firefox at the moment. But what does this specific website look like if I load it into IE? So I'm going to take the same URL and load it into IE, and let's have a look at exactly the same page and see what results we get. So as you can see, from this page, we're getting an error. And that error tells us a little bit of information. It tells us we've got a browser version, undefined. And if we go into the tools options, we can have a look, and it won't tell us much more information. So we know we have some form of issue. Now, this one's quite severe. On many websites, you'll just see it will display, but you'll see some form of issue or some part of a page won't display correctly. So what I want to do is let's load this URL into the workbench. So it's a simple case of just hitting drag and drop, and I've dragged the URL onto the workbench. Now, you can load URLs in many ways. You can drag and drop them. You can load them from Word documents, or of course you can bulk load them. So if you have like, think of something like BP, for instance, who have thousands of pages, they're going to use bulk loading. They're going to load thousands of pages over an evening, for instance, and then do the testing in the morning. So what I want to do is I want to load this specific URL. So I'm going to do some static analysis in this example. So what I need to do is, you can see I've dropped the URL onto the workbench. I have an internet connection. The next button, of course, is load it. So I hit load it, and then it will start to do that domain scan. It's going to actually go to the domain and start to look for all of the different dependencies and all the different links that are on that particular domain from wherever we start from. It's now gone off, and it's started to do the analysis, and you can see that it's given me a status of the web data that it's actually analyzing. And as it's analyzed the data, it's now writing that data back to the database. And when it's finished writing the data, we can then start to do our checks and analysis against that data. And whilst it's doing that, what I want to do is just briefly look at some of the types of checks that we're actually going to look for when we look at a URL or a static URL scan. So again, at the top, you have your reports. Below, your applications or your web apps in this instance. That's loaded that URL. You can see that we've got some information here. You see it's got its dependencies loaded, and it will give you, it's checked out to me, and I'm the user who's going to actually be doing the work on this particular app. So before I start running this, you can see my next tick here. I'm going to select all of the URLs. And these are just URLs. We've been around the internet. We've grabbed them, or these are ones that, for instance, organizations have given us and asked us to do the checks on. You can see they're very varied, from large sites to smaller sites, delis, makeup manufacturers, for instance. So there's quite a few here. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to say run it. And that's going to run all of my checks against all of my specific URLs. And the types of things that we're actually going to be checking for are asynchronous Java code. So we're going to actually look for browser version changes. Some of the things that really catch us out are things like case sensitivity analysis. Because of the change in case sensitivity, if you've written a website in IE6, that wasn't an issue, and of course in IE8, that is an issue. You've got functions that may no longer be supported. Again, for every single type of issue, we give you a description, so you don't need to be an expert in this field. You get the information on what we're looking for and exactly what type of problems that we may specifically have. We're looking for Java applets that are no longer supported or may give us specific problems as we move forward. You've got things around security, so mixed zone security. There's many different types of issues, and then of course you've got all of the deprecated or no longer supported components that we also need to check for. As you can see, we're just at the end of this. At the bottom, you can see it's telling me I've got 2 more questions to ask before my scan is complete. So once we've actually finished the scan, what I'll do is I'll run a few reports whilst we're here also, so we can look at the data in a few different formats to get a good understanding of exactly what we're going to find. Now, from my experience, the biggest component here really is around the speed. How long will it take me to look at all of these URLs, depending on size of domain? Some of the information here also was dynamically captured. I actually have some dynamic data as I was surfing the internet today. So I captured some data, and I loaded it into the system off of my machine. And one other thing I wanted to note whilst we were here is that you're not seeing, there's only one fix here that has a cog icon. So a cog icon for us means that an application has an automated fix. And an automated fix allows us to actually fix those issues, of course, automatically. Now, with the web-based application, we don't have specifically automated fixes. What we do is provide that information, and we go down into a granular level to actually show you what that information is and how those particular types of problems will actually affect these particular URLs. So you can see the results are finished there. So as you can see here, from our results, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 applications that are green, so they're ready for UAT. We didn't find any specific issues. And then we can start to dig into all of the different issues that we found on particular pages. So this is our old website. You can see this is a source load, so it's got specific issues around some Java, asynchronous Java issues. And I can drill down and start to look at all of the specific issues. You can see we've got one specific issue here. It's telling me it's a particular HTML file. You've got browser version checking analysis. You see there's 23 issues here. It's telling me the specific line and column of those specific issues. And then if we can pass this information on to our dev team, we can then do the analysis or do the remediation of all of the issues that we specifically find. Now, if we look at the other web pages, if we look at the trip log, when we looked at it in IE, it said it had a type of issue. You can see the issue was actually caused by a case sensitivity problem and some deprecated functions that are no longer supported. We've got 7 issues here. And as again, you get all of the detail around the URL and the specific component that's given us a problem. Again, you get that description, so you understand exactly what type of issue. But more importantly, rather than trying to search for these problems, you can then pass these problems straight on to the people who are actually going to fix those within your IT team, or whether it's the web developers themselves who are actually going to fix these problems. So we've got a lot of information here. This site here is very large. You can see it's got 74 issues. Very large website. It's a business-led website, so it's got many pages, many domains, many different types of problems here, down from features and functions that are no longer supported. So you can see there's a deprecated components here, and it's telling us which particular components are no longer supported. But what I want to do is start to look at some of this data in a reporting format. So the first thing you want to do is have a summary report. Let me see specifically what I've done as part of my analysis. So this is a high-level check. Gives me quite a lot of information around the number of reports I've run, the number of applications or web URLs that we've examined, and the number of, in this instance, red, amber, and green issues. We've got 6 amber and 7 green. So 7 of the sites had no issues, 6 had issues. And then it tells us the specific group of checks that we were running. So you can see we were only running one type of check in this instance, which is around presentation, and it tells me the number of red and amber for those particular issues. What's very interesting, though, is that you can actually specify for each type of problem. It will tell you the number of packages affected, the number of issues, and if required, you can start to put in some costing. Now, at the moment, there's no costing added here, but of course, if I wanted to, I could put an hourly rate and the cost in hours, and then that will give me a calculation of all of the specific problems that I have. And then we have lots of other reports. So we've got things like profile reports, which give us a high-level view of what our websites look like today. So you can see that, to scale this, you can see that the red and the amber issues, so you get a very high-level view. And then we can start to get more granular as we start to dig in and create more reports. This one's very useful for your guys actually doing the remediation or the fixing. It tells us the types of issues we've got. In this instance, the amber issues. This is the AOK website. It tells me the type of issue, the number of issues, and then it details all of the issues for each type of issue that it's found. And so this is the type of report that you could then pass on to the individual teams that are actually going to be doing the fixing. There are many ways to look at the data. The data can be looked at from here. If you're not using the tool itself, of course, you can actually look at the data remotely. And we have a web-based version where we can actually start to dig in, drill down into all of the specific issues. You can see I'm looking at these particular issues here. I get information about total number of issues, the specific issue I'm concerned with. You can see some of the cost and effort information here now. And we can then start to drill down into the data until we get to the specific area of interest for us. It's another way, another view of looking at the data. We also have automated consultants reports that will actually generate Word documents with all of that data. We can export as CSV files, allowing you to actually read and look at that data in different formats or skin it in any way that you desire. So that's a brief overview of the tool. Now, we looked there at the static analysis. As I said earlier, if we were going to be within your infrastructure, the type of thing you may want to start to look at is also the dynamic piece. And that's something that we would normally do with a server and a specific application. So it's not something we'll show today, but it's definitely something you guys should take into consideration, depending on the type of environment that you want to be concerned with. So once again, thank you for your time and thank you for attending. It's much appreciated. And I hope to see you all on another call shortly.